Hi, I'm here with my good friend, Alan Page.
Sorry, I made you giggle already.
You did, and I'm distracted because the thing on the bottom says spy, paren, Alan.
Oh, we can talk about that.
Why don't we just start there? Since it's come up. Why are you a spy?
Let's do that. So, I think you know this, but we didn't talk about it last time. I left my job last April after working in corporate world for many years, and I walked from Mexico to Canada on the Pacific Crest Trail. Took me about 4.5 months. It was a lot of fun, and one thing common on long trail hikes is people to get trail names because otherwise you have 11 different people named Andrew and 45 Jennifers and a bunch of Stevens, and you can't. And did you see Steven? So people are given trail names, and some people will pick. Very few people will pick one on their own, but they're cool when they come from somebody else. Usually it comes from something you did, like they may start calling someone chef because they're cooking very elaborate meals every night. Or I just met via LinkedIn, another tester who hiked. I didn't see him on trail. He went the other way from Canada to Mexico, but I asked him about his trail name. He said his trail name was SOS because on his very first night before the trail, he talked in his sleep and called for help. So they called it SOS the whole way. So they come from one of the really cool people I met on the hike was named Yeti because he was walked down from Mount San Jacinto and his beard was covered in ice and snow. Looked like a Yeti. So they just kind of come from that. So when I was hiking, I started without a trail name. I was merely Alan, and I was trying to keep a trail journal. And I realized because after about a week or two in, I realized how much all the days are blurring together, and I wanted to be able to remember a little bit better in the future. So I was dictating a trail journal into my phone, and it was working out very well. And because I was hiking by myself most of the time, and I was hiking with Yeti and his wife, Spout. There's a story there as well. And Spout came running up behind me on the trail and said, "You talk into your phone a lot. Are you a spy?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Well, that's your trail name." And it kind of stuck. And there's the persona fit, the name fit. You know me. I'm observant. I notice things. And we'll talk a little bit about a side project I've been working on, but spy is in that project as well. A form of me, or maybe a feature form of me, or something based on a little bit on me. I don't know, but that's where spy came from. It's been my nickname. I have a which hoodie? I'm wearing a Unity hoodie right now where I used to work, but because I have a hoodie over there with spy on the back. You can't see it, but anyway, it's been a fun little name. So for right now, I am Spy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Also Alan. You can call me Alan. It's fine. But a lot of people, there's people from the trail that we call it our government names. Like, I don't know, what's your government name sounds weird. I'll just call you by your trail name. Is that better? And
there
so that's where Spy came from. And that's why I'm one of my emails says Spy and my name here says Spy. So yeah, and that'll show up because we do video. That'll show up as Spy. That's kind of where the name came from. You can call me either. I'm hoping that when I do go back to the corporate world, it'd be really cool if my email could be spy@somecompany.com. But most companies, as you know, Elisabeth, are far too corporate-y to allow me to do that.
I do know. Hey, so if you're listening to this or watching this and wondering, this seems strange, you started the conversation in the middle. That's actually because this is a continuation of a conversation that you and I started on your podcast.
Yes.
And we're just picking up a little bit where we left off. Although I'm going to confess, it's been long enough between these that I don't actually remember exactly where we left off.
I speak so much in tangents that it's hard to tell where one conversation begins and the next one ends. By the way, a very good friend of mine listens to the podcast. We do tangents a lot. We go, tangent. And tangent would be a great name for a dog, we decided.
That would be a great name.
So anyway, I just want to throw that out there.
I mean, especially squirrel. I pursue squirrels, and my dogs pursue squirrels. But a tangent somehow sounds a little bit.
I think it'd be a cool name. Just note that for the future. I hope someday I'm at a dog park and I hear someone yelling for Tangent to come, from fetching a stick or something. All right.
It'll be a sign.
What tangent/path shall we discuss? So it's to Discovered Spy. We're continuing. Oh, my podcast is called the A/B Testing Podcast.
We'll make sure the link is in the show notes for this.
And it's not really, although sometimes we talk about experimentation, it's really about the A is for Alan and the B is for Brent, my other co-host. So that's and we originally started off talking about how testing was changing due to Agile, and I've been thinking more recently how testing is changing. Agile was one press on the accelerator, and AI is just another big press. And come on, folks, keep up.
So one of the things that you and I talked about before, and that I still am continually blown away by, is the extent to which we have been kind of career doppelgangers. I think first had an opportunity to have a really in-depth conversation as we were wandering around. It was either a park in Sydney, Australia, or in New Zealand. I think it was New Zealand.
I think it was Christchurch.
And you're right. And we were both there for the Stands conference, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about Agile at the time. And we found that we had so much in common, both with our own experiences and then with the opinions that we had formed based on those experiences. And so you just said, the big shift was Agile, and now it's AI. Come on, keep up, which is really hilarious.
But true.
You want to unpack that a little bit more? When you say, come on, keep up, say more about what's on your mind these days.
Well, sure. But I'm going to get there from in my normal way by a tangent first. One thing about us, we'll talk about the doppelganger bit a little bit here, is that there is a framework from Pat Lencioni, who wrote Five Dysfunctions of a Team, very famous book. His latest thing is a thing called Working Genius. He says there's, basically to get a project done, you have to have wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. That's how stuff gets across. And his framework is that you have two of those are your geniuses, two are your frustrations, and two kind of are your competencies. And I am very much a discerner, and I'm betting you are too, because we see patterns. We recognize them. We know how to ask the right questions, kind of flesh things out. I'm very much a discerner and a galvanizer, but I think a lot of it is because we are looking at the same things through the lens of people who find patterns easily and love to explore those patterns and see where they do and they don't make sense. So when we were talking, 15 years, I don't know how long ago that was, 15 years ago?
It was
17 years ago.
A long time ago.
Woo! There was a thing called Agile that
was relatively new at the time.
A lot of testers were freaking out about because, hey, they're moving so fast. I don't have time to do all my testing at the end anymore. And Elisabeth and I were like, oh no, maybe the testing should happen earlier. Maybe we should test as we go along. That would be better. And also realizing that people are getting excited about Agile and ignoring testing. And there are practices probably still in place in some places where let's do testing in the iteration after the one where we do the development, because that makes sense. Doesn't make sense. And all kinds of ways to try and adapt it. Like, how do we still test last if we're trying to ship value every 2 weeks? This doesn't make sense. So we were watching this just pure asinine things happening, and look, no, this is good, because small pieces, I would rather ship 50 times a day than once every 2 weeks. I would rather 100%. Ship twice a day than once every 2 years, like we used to do at Microsoft. Small change, easy to track. So things sped up. Testers were like, oh my God, what's happening to my job? And then the Agile testing books came out, very good. And slowly people are figuring it out. And I'm seeing definitely more than 17 years ago, but teams are sort of like, okay, I get it. I know what to do. Other people can own quality besides me. I'm just the expert, blah, blah, blah. We can throw darts and all that as they were. So Agile came along, it sped up. Testers went, oh, I got to catch up. And they finally got their fingers on the train. Most of them, things are going all right. Now, software delivery got exponentially more faster quickly. It moves faster. And testers are once again going, I can't keep up. How do we test this? It's just AI slop. And of course, there's the false dichotomy of either AI will solve all of our problems or AI is a fad and it's going to go away. The answer is somewhere in the middle because it's obvious, because we see patterns and it's easy to see. So things moving faster. Even the best Agile testers on teams are going, oh my God, I can't keep up, because we're still shipping to customers every week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, but we're shipping 10 times as much stuff. Well, but the answer is still kind of the same. And this will hint at something else we're going to talk about. Quality is a system. It comes out of the way software is produced and the culture it's produced in. It's almost like the culture is the immune system that tries to fight off the change. And but things are moving much faster, and once again, we need to learn to adapt. And it doesn't mean testing jobs are necessarily going away, but what they do is shifting again. 25 years ago or 30 years ago when I first started, the job was to basically test quality into the product, although no one would admit that. When we moved to Agile, there was less of that, but testers still felt like they were the last line of defense, had to test quality in the product. Not so much. And now with us moving so much faster, they just can't continue to feel that way. They need to, like I've always said, our priority is improving the business, and we accelerate the achieving the shippable quality. That's what we can do. And again, testers usually have that systems thinking, some of that discernment, that critical thinking. We need to work on trying to move things faster, help the team move things faster successfully, and get out of this, I'm the roadblock, I'm the voice of the customer. It's just too slow for the future. So it's everything that was hard. If you thought it was hard 15 years ago with Agile and you haven't changed your mindset since then, you are in for a very, very rough ride. Or you're
100%.
So there's my unpacking my suitcase. It's all over the floor, all over my desk.
And it's wonderful. You said several things that tweaked for me, because you and I have some shared context that not everybody who's watching this is necessarily going to have. Let's start. You said quality is a system. Let's start there. Because both you and I, it turns out, have spent an awful lot of time thinking about systems and systems thinking approaches. I have just finished a book with Joel Tosi that is now on its way to publication called Signals and Levers. And it turns out you've been writing on your, I don't know if you call it a blog or a newsletter or what you call it, but you've been writing a lot.
As long as you read it, I don't care what you call it.
You've been writing a lot, and it's all brilliant stuff about signals and systems. And so do you want to unpack a little bit more your perspective on quality as a system?
Yeah, and I will. And it's funny, I don't even know. This is another story I have to start in the middle and go both directions on. I spent a lot of time, I'll go back to my hike this summer. I spent a lot of time thinking. You're walking for 14, sometimes 16 hours a day, hopefully 12 to 14. And sometimes listen to podcasts. Most of the time it was just like letting my brain. Like, let's let it wander and see where it goes. Wonderful therapy, wonderful thinking. I started thinking about systems a lot. And I thought about quality a lot. And there's the modern testing principles. You can read them on moderntesting.org. Talk about how Brent and I were saying, not just, they're thinking about testing, they're about modern software delivery. And they're quality principles, not testing principles. And I thought about those, and then I thought, I want to write, and we'll get back to this in a little bit. I would like to write, I've been thinking about this for years, writing a fictional story, a business fable in the style of the Unicorn Project or Phoenix Project or any of the Pat Lencioni novels about a team that discovers these modern testing principles. So I wrote that in my head a lot. I had like all the plot points and a lot of the ideas, the characters, and Phoenix Project visual, very good there.
Yes.
And I had it in my head.
You wrote it in your head. Yes.
And then I started thinking about systems and quality of the system. I wrote the book. And then maybe a couple of months ago, I wrote this Quality is a System newsletter. And then most of the newsletters after that were around signals, which is really interesting, given, you're absolutely right. We came to this thing totally independently, but I think it's not necessarily a weird coincidence. I just think we will think about the world around us the same way. So I was asked to give a presentation to a community in Ukraine, and topic of my choice. So I said, I would like to give a talk based on this newsletter called Quality as a System to a bunch of testers. And so I did, and it went perfectly. Like, they got it. And here I am telling folks, like, here, and the gist of it is like, quality is not a role. Quality is a system. Even though a lot of these people, quality is their role. but I was happy I was able to explain it in a way. One, and as you know, if you want to really make sure you understand something, try and give a talk about it. Try and teach it. And help me, because in preparing it, I had to vet all my thoughts and get those together. And it got to a point where, anyway, I got to the point in the presentation, I got it. It made sense. And then there's some great, I knew they got it. Here's where the story is going. I knew they got it because a couple people posted their sort of recap of what I said on LinkedIn. I said, oh my God, that's exactly it. So I'm just, rather than giving you my own thoughts, I'm just going to read a few notes from this. Sometimes we ignore things that don't seem like big problems and tell ourselves we'll fix them later. Then they turn into big problems. What that means is we ignored the signal and it turned into something bad. Mm-hmm. And then a couple things I said. So quality, as I said, quality doesn't live in a role, it lives in the system people operate within. Systems produce exactly what they're designed to produce, which is very similar to, I am brain farting on the law that says that your product, your org, basically that your org chart, your product matches your org chart. Conway's law. Yes. Conway's law.
Yes.
And
there's also
definitely a variation on that.
The system is intended to do what the system does. There's a quote about that I am brain farting on exactly who said it and exactly what the quote is, but that was the other place you might have been going.
Yeah. And then big takeaway at the end, I'm just going to, again, I'll read this and we'll go on, but we don't fix recurring behavior by managing harder, coaching harder, or leading harder. We fix it by changing the conditions that made the behavior work. And I'm a big believer in that stuff. And I've seen it work. I've seen it not work. I mean, I've seen what happens when you don't fix the system. It doesn't mean you fix the culture. It's the system. The system is not just the culture. The culture is a part of it, but it could be what steps are automated. How can we take this release process that takes a full day and have it take 2 minutes? Like, how do we break that down? And this is, we talk about theory of constraints and bottlenecks, which are a big part of Agile and Lean, but also a big part of our modern testing or modern delivery principles. Identify the biggest bottleneck or the biggest customer pain point, do that one first, and then move on to the next one. You can't fix everything at once. And it doesn't even matter how high. The CEO can make a mandate, like, please improve quality. And you got to start somewhere. And that very few things start from the top. So the fixed system. I think culture is something that has to be modeled from leadership, but there's so many things that can happen at a mid to lower level to improve the system.
Oh, 100%. So I should also say you were one of the early reviewers on Signals and Levers. So you and I do have not only
it was so good.
That wasn't fishing for a plug, but thank you.
It was so good. But I can't wait for it. I can't wait for people to read it. I'm excited. Sorry, go on.
Well, what I was going to say, though, is not only have you and I been thinking along parallel tracks and developed much of the same vocabulary completely in parallel, not realizing that we were, especially around signals. But we also have a shared vocabulary now around the terms that we're using in the book. So I want to talk about levers for a minute, because everything that you just talked about, like the CEO can't and culture does and et cetera, to me, all of what you were just talking about were the levers that you can use to change the system. And one of the failure modes that I do see is when somebody in a high executive position mandates a change without, like, they absolutely have the ability to put their thumb on the scale, but them not understanding how their levers operate is one of the reasons why you end up with people in executive positions who are saying, I don't understand. I've been trying to get them to change for years and this organization won't change. And then they blame the people in the organization.
Absolutely.
You've seen this, right?
Like the leader I had, it says, our org will have psychological safety. And if you don't think we have it, I will talk to you about it personally.
No, not seriously.
Pretty much. Yeah. Slightly paraphrased, but yeah.
The lack of awareness, it burns.
And also, and you know this too, one thing, maybe a thing we figured out, this is a little tangent, but I want to bring it up because I thought about it, is because I have to be reminded of this sometimes. As you can tell from talking to me, I've been in VP roles the last 5-6 years and pretty high leadership roles before then. I forget, like, I treat my orgs very flat. Like, big on psychological safety, big on transparency. Anyone can bring up any question anytime and feel good about it. so I feel like, and I like to be personable. I like to talk to people, but I forget sometimes that with a title comes weight. You get a bigger lever when you have a bigger title.
100%.
And I think some of us try to be careful with that. And some of the others of us, not you or I, will use that lever as a weapon, or not necessarily as a weapon, but they'll use it. They'll lean on it too much. I had another leader at Microsoft, Peter. I can give his name because there's like 10,000 Peters at Microsoft, right? Peter had a leadership title, so he demanded. He said, I have this title. You need to treat me this way. And I thought, I think you need to earn our respect. I think there's a difference between calling yourself a leader and being a leader. Anyway, with that title, no matter what, there's some extra weight that comes with that that's worth remembering and also acknowledging.
100%. Yes. I also think that in what you said is another point that's really important about levers, because you said people who are not at the executive level, who actually like have their hands on the keyboard, they have levers that the executives don't. And I feel like that is a super important thing for everyone to understand, and especially anybody who feels powerless in a large hierarchy, like, oh, I have no power. If you're the one putting your hand on the keyboard, you actually have an outsized amount of power.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring. It reminds me, if you're backing up here, someone asked me, I'm just an IC at the bottom level of the leaf. How can I change the system? And my favorite answer is, my only answer is this. My best answer is this. I'll put it this way. And it requires a preamble. One thing I've said for many, 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 many years is, other than your one-on-one with your manager, the most important meeting you can have is your team retro. If you're not having retros at all, that's a problem that maybe you have to try and get someone above you to go figure out. You're not going to drive that from your leaf node position. But it's more difficult. But if you're in that retro, my God, you have a lever. You can pick that one thing. Don't pick 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 2 if you need to, but one. I like one. What's one thing we're going to do differently, and what do we expect will happen? Then in the next retro, we can talk about it. But if you do that for every retro, every week or two, that lever, like, it's a tiny lever, but it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're changing the system. You're changing the way you're changing the system that your software is delivered in, and it will get better. You can do that from anywhere. Speak up. Say, let's try this. Let's just something. And it's a lever.
You said something, though, that is so incredibly subtle that I think it's worth digging into. There were 2 things that you said that were subtle. First is, let's try this. So one of the failure modes for some retrospectives is that it becomes a whining fest where they're, the people in the room are complaining about all the things that people who are not in the room are doing wrong. But no matter what the thing is, yeah, you've seen this.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. But no matter what the thing is, even if it's a thing that the people in the room don't control, that you feel like is the one thing that you would shift if you could, there is a set of actions that the people in the room could take. It might be making the request, petitioning, influencing somebody, but that's the action. And the second thing, so it's centered on, what are we going to do differently? Not what are we going to blame everybody else for not doing to support us? So what are we going to do? The second thing you said that is so subtle but so critical is, we have a hypothesis. You didn't quite use these words, but basically you were saying, we think this is going to change if we do this. So we have a hypothesis. So you're calling your shots. If we do this differently, we think that the outcome is going to be that. Those are the 2 things that make the retro powerful and able to change, even though, it might be like rounding off one square corner on a wheel at a time, very slowly, but you'll get there if you do those 2 things.
I'm looking on your bookshelf behind you for a copy of the Lean Startup. I know it's in there somewhere.
It is. It's somewhere. I'm not going to look for it right now, but I'm 100% certain.
Everything's an experiment. A thing you're trying internally, a thing you're shipping. A feature is an experiment. Let's and I'm a big believer on when I work with teams that are shipping software externally, is it's an experiment. Like, I ask teams, like, what's going to change when we ship this feature? Let's have a hypothesis. Is it acquisition? Is it uptick? Is it whatever's going to happen? Is it more sales? And let's make sure we have measurement in place for that through telemetry. And then let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do if our hypothesis is met or not met. And often in those discussions come, tweaks to the implementation, tweaks to the product. We're not making software because we know how to write software and we think it's fun and cool, although that's some motivation. We kind of want to make software because we want to help people solve problems or help them get done what they want to get done. And once you get that mindset, get over the wouldn't it be cool mindset. And I think it was one of the Poppendykes who said, customers don't want software, they want their problem solved. Once you can get into that mindset and realize that anything, you don't know what the customers want. You are not the customer. I don't care how much you say you're the customer, you're not. If you can get into a point where what you are giving them is an experiment and you can have a way to measure whether that experiment is good or bad, you're shooting in the dark. You have to, anyway, so everything's an experiment. I believe my leadership style is everything is an experiment. Let's try this. Let's see what happens. Let's talk about what could happen, what couldn't happen. Let's revisit. Let's tweak. Gosh, I've read 10,000 or at least 100 books on leadership. And if I just blindly took everything I read and tried to implement it, it'd be a big cacophony of noise. What I do is as a discerner, I find the patterns. I think, oh, here's a thing that given our context, here's a thing that I think will work. Let's try this, see what happens. I'd like to get the way you get, I think this is, what's his face? The physicist from Portland. He says the way to get a good idea is to get a lot of ideas and then throw the bad ones away.
Nice. So sorry, who said that?
Oh, I'm spacing on his name. I used to know. It'll come back to me in a bit, I'm sure.
Okay, we will try to track down that quote and put that quote into the show notes as well, because now I'm super curious. But coming back to
yeah, where were we?
Squirrel tangent. So I was working on this book. It turns out at the same time, in parallel, you were also working on your own book.
I was.
I want to hear more about your book.
Okay.
I mean, actually, to be fair, you have shared the manuscript with me, and
it's better now. I made some edits. Brilliant. It's even better. So it's both the same and different from your book. So I'm excited about that. So you're not stealing all my thunder should I ever publish this. And I'm going to talk a little bit. Your book it's not like it's always going to be stealing ideas from this, but I like your book in that it weaves back and forth between a fable and the science behind it. Like, this is why this works, what you should be thinking of, and also some good practical, like, here's something you can go do right now. I think it's a great approach. It's in, I will say, in like every way, better than
Thank you, but can we come back to your book?
Yeah, but I want to compare. But we're getting there because they're about the same thing in a different way. So I wanted to write a story about a team, an organization that was struggling to release quality software, where the person in charge of quality was seen as the scapegoat and the person to blame, but in a very realistic way, not too contrived. It starts off with a release room, because if you have one of those, you're in trouble. And tried to describe the tension that was in there and what goes on. So things are they're not off the rails horrible, but bad enough it should be relatable to a lot of teams. And losing customers, this, similar to your book. A consultant comes in who doesn't do much. The protagonist is Anna. Anna is the main protagonist, and she's the QA manager. She knows her stuff, but she's stuck in a system that isn't working for delivering quality software. It doesn't matter how much harder you test. And she has taken on so much pressure trying to hold things together in a system that won't support it. So a consultant comes in, Jordan, who later Anna finds out hiked the PCT, asks their trail name, and says it's Spy because I notice things, find patterns, etc. So a little bit there. Spy is a little bit, maybe slightly aspirational version of me, but not so much. Spy is who I want to be, and more on that later. And Spy just asks questions, which is sort of my leadership style. I go, you need to do this and this and this. It's like, well, here's an idea. And they get some quick wins, and everything feels good. And then, of course, when you fix part of the system, some of the thing you'll find, as you know, more bad things have been hidden forever, now become highlighted. It actually makes it look like it's worse because now the obvious things are gone. You go, oh my gosh. In our case, very realistic thing. The pricing. I won't go into the details of what it is in the book, but basically the pricing sheets are all over the place, out of order, stale, pulling from the wrong places. Customers getting wrong totals. It's just a big mess. And the problems were always there. They can just see them now. So Spy introduces his only real contribution to the book, other than asking questions to the storyline, is he introduces the modern testing principles. And other than it's not like we're going to do principle number 1 here. It's like, here's how we're going to approach things, and I explain how they work, or Spy does. And the team then they start using data a lot more. They start trying to understand the customer. They focus on customer flow versus where they think they want to test. They work very closely with development to map things out. What are the flows? How do customer flows work? How does data flow from one thing to another? What influences what? They do a lot of work on mapping, and it sort of unfolds, and a nice happy ending at the end. And where I like to be like Spy is turns out Spy, I'm not going to give away too much, but there's a reason Spy shows up in the book. It's not because Anna wasn't doing her job. It's something else behind the scenes. It wasn't like just it's because someone knew that Spy had some ideas on how systems work, and they couldn't figure it out. It's like, I can't figure out the system. You're good at this. Come look at it. And Spy eventually, in fact, I don't want to give away the ending. So Spy does leave. He's there for a little while. Anna continues to crush it there, and I left myself a little space for a sequel in there, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, all fiction about, it's Phoenix Project length. I think it's with I have rather, yours is interspersed, sort of like here's the lessons. I'm writing sort of a playbook and some study guides and some things at the end in an appendix.
Nice.
So all in all, it's 45,000 words. So I'm excited about it, and I'm currently looking for a publisher, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm really excited about it. I just, as I told Elisabeth just before we were recording, I just went through a full other pass of edits and continuity checks because I hadn't looked at it in a while and fixed a bunch of stuff. So I reread the whole book last week, so it feels good. So
yay!
Anyway, that's the long version, but the short version, it's a story about quality as a system. That's really
I love that. I love that.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, and we'll see what happens next. I know the process. Even if I were to find a publisher today, the process of electrons to atoms is very, very long.
It is. Yes.
I will figure something out in the meantime. I may do, the chapters are all short, so I may, like, my newsletter you may see chapters pop up to just kind of gain some interest as I get a little closer. It'd be fun to look at. But anyway, that's it. Any questions from the audience?
Well, I'm afraid that's going to be a little bit difficult because they're going to be separated in time and space from where we are right now. So, unless we've got time machines. So, which I am fresh out of time machines. I don't know about you.
I have, as we mentioned on a little segue from the last, from the podcast we did together, time is a drunk slinky that I cannot control.
I love that. I have used that multiple times since
I'm so happy.
we talked.
I'm so happy.
I love that because I usually say
sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast, it's unpredictable.
Yep, drunk slinky. And I had previously been using the Good Place, Jeremy Bearimy, timey wimey, because yes, what is time? But anyway, drunk slinky is my new favorite.
It should be.
At the very beginning of this conversation, you mentioned that you have a side project going on.
Oh, that was the book.
The book is the side project.
The book is the side project. Other than that, just for context, I came back from the trail. I took a while before I even looked for a job. I'm starting to pick up a little bit of coaching. So I'm doing some leadership coaching, as you are. Again, parallel doppelganger paths. And
so wild, yes.
still, looking for, I still may go back to a full-time job, but at this point, one of the things I really thought about a lot when I was hiking is I will no longer work to have a job. I want to work at something where I really feel they're the same thing. I was going to say fulfilled, but it's really, I want to do the work that I'm good at. Even giving this talk last week, that was a lot of fun. I like doing stuff like this, or these podcasts. They're fun. They're if I can be mentally engaged on things I'm passionate about all day, that's the job I want to do. So, but the market's slow, so I'm being selective in a selective market and taking my time and trying not to run out of money in the meantime. But obviously, I have a nice dog in the background, so life's not too bad. But that's kind of where I'm at. We'll see. Those are my projects. And in addition to that, my other side project is in this, what I call mini retirement. I am playing pickleball a lot with the 70-year-olds over at the community center.
That is so adorable.
Is it? They go, Alan, you're here. I said, hi. They're funny.
Okay. So let's come back to the career doppelganger thing.
Yes.
Because you and I don't remember where we were respectively at the time we met. I'm sure I was consulting because that's what I've spent an awful lot of
You're
time.
probably Quality Tree.
Probably Quality Tree. And at the time you would have been probably
at Microsoft.
Microsoft then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was there for 22 years, so probably. The odds
high
are
probability.
With you.
Yeah. But when I look at our respective backgrounds, we both spent a lot of time in testing, test automation, quality stuff. We also both ended up doing engineering management of various flavors and types.
Yeah.
And so since so far we've talked in this conversation more about quality and test stuff, I want to talk about when you look at the transition, when you ended up not being the Anna in the room anymore, and now you are responsible for engineering. What was that transition like for you?
Enlightening and natural. I went from, it's funny, I wrote a book about testing at Microsoft, and I was known for testing there, but I didn't do a lot of testing there. I did for my first 5-6 years, and then I moved more into the tool side and very quickly into writing. This is pre-CI, writing infrastructure pieces, writing way back worked on Windows CE in, oh my God, like 2002, wrote a check-in system so that people wouldn't break the build. It was just a pre-check, a CI gate before we knew what that was. And I worked a lot on the systems people worked in before I realized I was doing that. And then eventually I moved into, even when I worked on Xbox, I worked on all of our tools for build and for all the build tools, test tools, diagnostic tools, things that help the team move faster. Again, before I knew it was a system. And then eventually I moved into pure infrastructure, everything, CI/CD for cloud-based, product. And at that stage I go, oh, wow, I have a much bigger lever for quality than I ever had before. And then from there, I had resisted a lot being a people manager at Microsoft till the very end, because being a people manager in the Steve Ballmer years, especially, you would get rewarded, but you had to do dumb things like, even if the system under Ballmer disincentivized having a good team, because you had to give some people on your team a bad review no matter what. And I said, no, I want to have a high performing team. I don't want to do this. So I'm not going to, it just doesn't make sense. I don't like this. So I avoided it as long as I could. And then, rose into this infrastructure role and actually liked it, not just the infra part, but turns out I like, as much as I hate people, I like working with people. I get a lot of satisfaction about people.
You do not hate people. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you knew me. Yeah. Okay. I don't hate people. I don't hate all people. So I studied a lot. And then when I went to Unity, I had a lot more opportunity for managing larger teams, and then working on things like accountability and delivery and psychological safety. And my big principles is, again, based on a whole bunch of work, is transparency, accountability, psychological safety. Let's be transparent about what we're working on. Let's all hold each other and ourselves accountable. And let's be safe about it. Let's be willing to screw things up. And that really helped me one, my teams be successful, but two, just it helped fit who I am as a person with how I lead, and it worked. Did the same thing at NBCU, and again, the lever I had to control quality as a leader, as a VP, so much more because I had more control over the system. I didn't control the system, but I had a lot of control over the levers, and very few were levers I pulled. I may have ideas around my principles, as I mentioned before, but then it's my job. My lever was not to say, we have these principles. My lever was to reward those loudly when I saw them happen across the team. Thank you for letting me know that this project's going to be, we celebrate red. Thank you for letting me know this project's going to be a week late. What did you learn? Very cool. All right. Well, we'll do better next time. I appreciate the transparency.
Nice.
And because you want to, you had another phrase for this, but reward the behavior you want to see.
Feed what you want to grow. I'm so glad you went there. Yes, because that's one of the most important culture levers that you have.
It's a lever, and as a leader with a fancy title, you pull your culture levers, pull your culture levers, tongue twisters, but also you are coaching and managing the people around you on the levers they can pull. And if you do it right, and you do it, and you if you do it enough, they'll pull the levers with their team, and they get that it works. It's this very complex system, and your book does a good job describing this, but I'll talk about it in the abstract for the audience here. It's like you have this fancy machine, and you got to figure out which levers are the ones that are going to change something. So you don't pull them all at once. You pull one that you think has the highest chance of changing things, not just the one you can reach. You may have to get a ladder for some, but you want everyone on the team to know, like, we're going to pull levers one at a time and watch the system, see how it behaves. Everything comes back to a system. But yeah, the levers I get to pull as a leader, much more important. Now, I really love leading teams. I love because I get a lot of satisfaction about watching people improve the way they work, watching them get joy from how they work. Dan Ping talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, which are very close to my principles. To twist a little bit, give people space to do their best work, and then enough space. Accountability and autonomy are two sides of another lever. You got to balance that one out. But I really like helping people do good work. So in some of the coaching I've been doing, or some of the mentoring I've been doing a little bit ad hoc, I get to do that in the talks I get to give, and podcasts like this, or you on mine, I get to talk about these things. The reason Brent's been on hiatus since I got back from the podcast, the big joke is he continues to work on projects directly for Satya. I think this week, actually, Brent is rewiring the Ethernet. I think he's putting Cat 7 in all of Satya's house, if I remember right. So I don't know what's... or maybe just changing the password away from the admin password on his Wi-Fi, one or the other. But in the meantime, I have a chance to talk to a bunch of people and just keep my brain active on things I like. So that was a very long way of saying, as I progressed in leadership roles, it turns out I love it. Turns out I think I'm pretty good at it, and I get a lot of satisfaction around helping people do their best work.
And you said two things in there that were really interesting. I want to fish back out and highlight.
Yeah.
One is, as an engineering leader, you had so many more levers to affect quality. And I think that this is a conclusion that both of us had come to. Mm-hmm. Again, this is another one of those parallel doppelganger things. And it's what led me ultimately to give a talk to a CTO club that I'm a member of, where it was about modern quality engineering, and the kicker, the punchline at the very end of the talk was a slide that basically said, "Oh, by the way, dear CTOs, you may have hired somebody and given them the title of something head of quality, or whatever, something quality in the title, but actually you're the head of quality." Because yes, no matter what roles you have hired, if you are the top person on the formal hierarchy for the engineering organization, ultimately you're the one who is driving all of the behaviors that affect the quality system.
You own the system.
You do. You own responsibility for the system. That doesn't mean that you can affect change by just declaring it, as we've discussed.
Yeah, or by just telling people what to do.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. So how do they take that?
They took it well, but this is a great group of people. Like
Yeah.
this is the San Francisco CTO Club is an amazing group of very thoughtful leaders, and so they took it incredibly well. Um, but the second thing that you said was when you were talking about your work very, very early in Microsoft, where you said we were building tools, putting in CI gates before that was like a common mainstream thing that people talked about. And to go faster. And that idea that quality to go faster. I think that there are some people for whom that they believe in that whole like good, fast, cheap pick too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want you to react to that because you
Well,
said it and I'm highlighting that you said this thing that was buried in.
sometimes the best way to speed things up is to add some friction to the system. It sounds counterintuitive, but we would spend, and in our case, like on Windows CE, we would spend days debugging like which change broke the build and trying to had the build team. This was before Git. They were Microsoft had a Perforce based Perforce fork, and just trying to figure out, okay, what happened here, blah blah blah. And it was complex. It was a big project. So although we slowed people down, and I have stories. The tool is called Slate, and I used to get emails called Slate rhymes with hate. Here's why this was a dumb idea. With just da, da, da.
Wait, what did Slate actually do? You have to explain it now that you've said that you got hate mail for it.
People, instead of checking in to directly to what we would call main today, or the main branch, things would get checked into this tool, and just normal check-in, and then it would check in on your behalf. If it would run a bunch of tests, it would make sure it build, run some tests and some static analysis, and then check it on your behalf. And we tried to parallelize it as much as we could, but it still took, an hour or two to get your change in at the time, because we didn't have it. Long story. So very much like you having a CI, we're going to build and test, same as we do today, although not as fast. And we'd reject stuff. And sometimes early on in the tool, there were bugs in the tool that would reject something that was fine. Or we would try, and if we got too many check-ins at once, we would try and pool things together. And then somebody get mad because somebody else, got their change rejected. So then we added logic to try and, bisect that and figure out which one actually broke and get the rest through all automatically. It took a little longer, but it was fine. So people didn't like that their change wasn't like, they would want to check something in and then have this is dumb. They would want to check something in and get mad because their office mate or the person next door, they couldn't sync it right away and test it out for them. Give them a patch. Come on. It's fine. That's a solvable problem. It's okay. It changed their workflow. To them, it felt slower to get stuff in to the main branch. But in the end, it was much faster because nothing was the only thing going into the actual source tree was vetted changes. The build lab, we had a build lab at the time. Their job was to build the whole product for all the different flavors every night and babysit them through. They were so happy because they had clean builds all the time, and they ran more testing after that, and it was great. But at first, it was people were slowed down. They were mad. Like, remove this immediately. Were some of the messages I got from dev leads and dev managers. I said no, and I was on the test team. I didn't have any. Said, I didn't say no. I said, well, let's give it a little bit more time. But within a month, Marty, the guy that I worked on this with, we were getting mails saying things like, we went from Slate rhymes with hate to the same developer a month later saying, I am so sorry. I don't know how we ever lived without this before.
Oh,
which is
that's
kind of what CI does. Yeah.
Amazing.
So, again, early enough in my career, I knew it was the right thing. Today, I would probably do it a little bit differently to cause less pain. I didn't mean for it to cause pain. May have done it in a pilot on one team first before everyone. But it didn't take long to go from this is the most worst thing ever to, oh my gosh, this is so much better than our old world. But anyway, that was what I did way back in, I think, 2002-ish. Seems about right. Yeah, that seems about right. Timeline.
That's an amazing story, and there is so much packed in there, including the fact that a month later, you were getting love letters about it.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
I have a quick story for the Agilist and you on that team. This is the team where I did two things. One, I wrote a tool to make it very easy for the developers to create unit tests using our test framework that existed on our team. And then I taught a class to our dev team on how to write unit tests. And I had two great questions that came from that. One is the one you've probably heard a lot of time. A dev comes and says, hey, if we're writing all the unit tests, what's the test team going to do? And I make a face. I had a worse one. I had a tester come to me and said, if the devs are writing all the unit tests, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So many
higher value things.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So there was a lot of learning on that team about sort of how things work today before I realized how things work today. I can go back and look and see, oh, that's okay. I was on to something. And same thing with systems and levers and signals. They've always been there. Systems and signals have been there long before you and I started thinking deeply about them.
100%.
You and I just both happened to find them around the same time. Find
Absolutely.
names for them.
Yes, and interestingly, the same name.
I didn't use levers, but systems and signals, yeah. That part is, I find, as I was reading your book, hilarious.
Absolutely. All right. Well, on that note, I could keep talking to you for hours more.
This could be a long running, like a serial kind of podcast. We just go forever talking about nothing and everything at the same time.
It's true. Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing at a time. So thank you so much. I am so grateful to you.
I'm grateful to you too. This has been so much fun, and we don't get to talk enough.
We can fix that.
We could. We can absolutely.
And
next time I come to the Bay Area, I'm gonna let you know, and I'm gonna get a pie.
Ooh, that sounds great.
I'll let you know.